Thank you very much, Reverend Angie, for that wonderful meditation and all the healers that have been here today. Our speaker today is Reverend Micheal. Come on up, Reverend Micheal.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Okay, this month's topic has been self-esteem. Related to self-esteem, today's topic is security. How can we be secure in our self-esteem when one main constant in this world is change? Over time, nothing remains the same. On a funny note, and something we all share and can relate to, is the evidence we see when looking into the mirror to know that this change is true. So let's talk about what we see in the mirror. I have a mirror in my pocket that I can pass around. No, I'm just kidding. My nephew put on Facebook some pictures he took in Spain and Portugal. He and his twin turned 40 last November. So I texted him thanking him for sharing his journey and that I was happy he was enjoying his youth and hiking the hillsides of parks above the cities, and said, in 2 decades, one morning, he is going to wake up looking like this. And I frizzed out my hair. I took this picture looking into the mirror. So, is the security of one's self-esteem on the outside or inside? I'll address this at the end of the talk. Spiritually, you can imagine the light of God around you for protection. Mentally, you can say affirmations, meditate, and pray. Physically, you can eat and drink healthy nutritional substances and exercise, as in taking a walk and being active. Within yourself or outside yourself, opening yourself up to new experiences, ideas, extending yourself physically, mentally, and spiritually develops your physical self-esteem, mental self-esteem, and spiritual self-esteem. Whatever it is, what you put into it is what you get out of it, as in activities like workouts, writing, eating, meditation, prayer, affirmations, writing papers, research, learning the policy, position, and function of business, sports, etc., whatever you're in. Involvement in activities in life affects your view of the evidence, as in what is your experience, the findings, as in how you view your experience, and the decisions, as in whether you stick with it or stay the course, or discard it and change the direction of your path. All of this affects the security of your self-esteem. There will be ups and there will be downs. And sometimes it may seem as though you have no control. But you really do, as to how you weather the calm or the storm and balance yourself, as in centering yourself within. Because after all, you are simply on your journey. I think there is an expression, you can never go home again. I imagine you would hope to find things the same as they once were, and of course this is not possible because change has occurred, at least to some degree. The concept of going home again is important because how we view ourselves is formed in the early years of childhood, and to some degree during later childhood, and this may even be carried through our later years of life as well. There are invisible cages we put ourselves in. For example, I knew 2 individuals, one a co-worker long ago, who chastised himself out loud for what I considered a prolonged length of time every time he made a mistake. Then, some years ago, there was this man, a brilliant man, whom I hired to do some work on the house in California. And he did the same thing. He chastised himself out loud at length every time he made a mistake. Now, these two cases were extreme cases. At times, we have all, to some degree, very briefly, rolled our eyes, or groaned, or sighed, or paused, or even frowned when we made a mistake. My point is, in some way, our environmental upbringing has molded us in how we deal with not only ourselves, but also the environment we create for ourselves and how we deal with that environment. Depending on how we view ourselves, our self-esteem and how secure we are with ourselves can be a Fort Knox of treasure that is reciprocated and engaging, or a Fort Knox of solitude. Either way, we are worthy of every ounce of the golden brilliance within our Fort Knox that we have, and also that which we create, because experiences are spiritual and lessons to be learned from, even though they may not be pleasant. After my divorce, I attended beginning experience for divorcees, widows, and widowers. It was in this case a massive group for therapy to self-examine your personal involvement in your marriage or significant other relationship, feelings, current status, and ability to move on. In essence, how secure are you in yourself, and how is your self-esteem? Around that time, I had a job that required writing and a lot of editing by my boss and my boss's boss. In review of my work, without fail, my boss would change some of the wording. One time, my boss changed the wording on a particular sentence. When I went back for another review, my boss was not there, so I took it to her boss, and her boss changed the wording of that particular sentence back to the way I originally had it. When I took the paper for another review, my boss changed the wording of that particular sentence back to the way she had changed it previously. On a subsequent review, my boss wasn't available again, so I went to my boss's boss, and she asked me why I had changed that particular sentence from the way she had it. And I told her my boss had me change it. So she said, change it back to the way she had it. So in this job, I did put in the effort, I did my best, and accepted that the editing was part of the job. Now, back to the beginning experience group. There was a meeting at someone's house where a couple of us were reading papers written, a couple of us to read papers written about ourselves, our significant other experience, what we felt we were the important aspects of the relationship, the demise or ending of the relationship, and where we were at presently. So the writing had some length to it. Now, in my job, I had little to no attachment to the print on the paper. But in my paper I was presenting to this group, as you might imagine, was my life, my feelings, my attachments, one might even say an aspect of my soul. Now, I understood that they had good intentions and were there to help us with the written papers, with their editing suggestions as we read our papers to them. But it stung a little because I had put my heart into what I wrote, as I assumed the others had also. After about an hour of reading and editing, I completed my editing process with the group. Then, with perfect timing, in a matter of seconds, the front door opened, and in walked a small group that had also ran the beginning experience group. Immediately, the leader of the group that just entered, in a loud voice, asked what was going on. When told the purpose of the meeting, he said, "Well then, let's hear it." One female said in a soft voice that she thought we had finished, but if anyone heard her, no one paid attention. I did not say anything and proceeded to read my paper again, and people from the new group proceeded to verbalize their editing prowess while the group that was there from the start remained silent. I just smiled within and thought, oh boy, here we go again, and thought it was turning into a comedy of sorts. This editing meeting was to help us because we were eventually going to read our paper to a larger group of people. Even though I knew they were only trying to help, I felt like I was on the operating table with no anesthesia, and they were ripping out my guts, my nerves, my heart, so it stung a little at first. I did not say anything because I knew they meant well, but they seemed so detached, so distant, so impersonal and uncaring. However, their job was not to provide sympathy, but instead to provide editing of the paper for presentation. But it felt like they were sterilizing my soul. They were not so much editing the grammar as they were the content of the paper. There were sections of the paper they were not interested in hearing and wanted to cut from the paper. But it felt like they were exercising my attachment to that part of my life experience. I guess their purpose was to condense the paper and leave parts that were viewed as personal, even though it was all personal to me because I lived it. But I did not say anything because I figured this was their process of being helpful. As you grow with experience, so also does your self-esteem grow to strengthen the security of who you are, thus the need to stretch yourself, open yourself up, and become vulnerable at times. Here at the chapel, Reverend David teaches us to go beyond. This going beyond stretches your comfort zone and in a way strengthens your security, your view of who you are and what you are capable of. So, how secure are you with your image? Any situation where you put yourself out there, dating, job interviews, meeting people, being in charge of people, etc., is going to test the security of your self-esteem. Test how secure you are with yourself. Hopefully, your experiences are not like the bizarro Superman character version of Superman in some distant fortress of solitude, such as another character in a great white house. I say bizarro Superman because this other character's experiences seem to bounce off of him like bullets off of a bizarro Superman. Every place you go physically is a test of your security and your self-esteem. Every person you encounter is a test of your security and your self-esteem. Every decision you make is a test of your security and your self-esteem. Every action is a test of your security and your self-esteem. Everything you do is either built on your security of your self-esteem or is building your security of your self-esteem. You are either doing something you are familiar with and or have done before, or you are doing something slightly different or completely different from what you have done before. And each time you do something, you are building the security of your self-esteem. Whether you realize it or not, you are building the security of your self-esteem physically, mentally, and spiritually. Everything, regardless of what it is, tests your security of your self-esteem. Now, this building and strengthening can be enforcing the security in the direction of a healthy self-esteem or a not so healthy self-esteem. We might think of our self-esteem is who we think we are in the moment. From the aspect that this world is an illusion, like a movie set that only lasts as long as it lasts and seems very real in the moment, our perception of who we are is like an old movie of scenes that is archived for eternity in our Akashic records. The security of your self-esteem is what I will address in the last sentence of this talk, and then you will understand that you do not have to worry about the security of your self-esteem. Now, concerning the security of my self-esteem related to this talk, I have no fear in talking to you today because I will not be indicted later like some other male figures in the news for the past year or two, and some of you, if not all of you, will not remember what I say in the coming week. But no worries, because my talk will be immortalized in each of your Akashic records for eternity. Thank you. Now, when you think about that, that is saying that everything you experience, think, say, and do will be immortalized in your own Akashic records for eternity. And how does that grab you? Concerning the security of your self-esteem. My friend Kathleen, who passed some time ago and who was very diverse in her psychic gifts, told me that we have the opportunity to tell our story on the other side. I imagined my soul being on stage with a vast audience of souls viewing my experiences, experiencing my life to its fullest details, as if they were living it as I shared. How does exploring your experiences to the fullest grab your self-esteem? We think we go on one path at a time in linear time. We do, but we really do not. Physically, we do go on one path at a time, but mentally, we are not as restricted as we are physically, and spiritually, we are not as restricted as we are mentally. Physically, we are bound by where our body is. Mentally, we are bound by wherever we imagine we are. Spiritually, we have no bounds. Realizing this is like having the combination to unlock the confinement of the security of our self-esteem. For instance, physically, we are in one location on Earth at a time, and from where we are, we draw a line and go from one place to the next on that path. Mentally, we can be any place on Earth and hop around from one location to the next in an instant. Spiritually, we are everywhere all at once, past, present, and future, or in spiritual expression, the is. Therefore, you are much more adventurous than you know. You are much more secure in your self-esteem than you know. Self-esteem, viewed from the outside, is an illusion, like a mirage in the desert. The security of self-esteem is not from the outside, it is from within. And lastly, you are not what others think you are. You are not what you think you are. You are what God knows you are. This is the security of your self-esteem. Now, before I say thank you and blessings, on a side note, my hair today was in costume for that picture that I sent. Yeah. So I asked Reverend David if he ever has a monthly theme on the soul, that I not be assigned the topic, how naked is our soul before God? Thank you and blessings.
Thank you, Reverend Michael. I did ask him before,